It's February 5th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the fifth hearing of President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial. President Yoon made an order to drag legislators out of parliament and arrest politicians. Key witnesses stated during the 7-hour-long hearing on Tuesday. Yoon denied the allegations, underlining that nothing really happened on the night of the martial law declaration back in December. China responded to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Beijing with retaliatory measures on U.S. imports, though an arrangement for possible phone talks between Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping is still in the works. An estimated 9,000 residents have fled their homes in Santorini and headed to Athens for safety after more than 300 earthquakes were reported near the Greek island since Sunday. According to the Santorini mayor, the quakes could continue for weeks before eventually diminishing. The Constitutional Court held its fifth hearing of President Yoon's impeachment trial, with 3 key witnesses in attendance. Now, eyebrows were raised on some of the clashing statements. Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol insists nothing really happened on the night of his martial law on December 3rd, denying that he issued orders to drag out legislators from parliament and arrest political figures. This came on Tuesday at the president's fifth impeachment trial hearing at the Constitutional Court, where 3 witnesses testified regarding the execution of martial law on December 3rd last year. There are clear discrepancies over where the president directly ordered the most controversial actions on that fateful night. Lee Jin-woo, former commander of the Capital Defense Command, reportedly told investigators he received 3 calls from the president to enter the National Assembly by force, opening fire if necessary, and drag out legislators to stop their vote to overturn martial law. But at the hearing, Lee refused to confirm or answer most questions about whether he had received calls or orders from the president. However, he denied he'd been ordered by Yoon himself to arrest lawmakers, and said former Defense Minister Kim Yong-yeon did not order troops to enter the Assembly building and prevent a vote to lift martial law. Former Defense Counterintelligence Command Chief Yoon and Kim also testified while under arrest, but avoided answering key questions. He previously said he had received orders to arrest and detain political figures. Meanwhile, former First Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Service Hong Jang-won reiterated his previous statement, saying Yoon called for a total clean-up, which he believed meant the arrest of politicians. Hong claims he called Yoon and Kim to clarify and received 14 to 16 names of figures to arrest, and was asked to track down their whereabouts. Yoon's side argued that the president meant for him to clear up spies, and their phone call had nothing to do with martial law. They added that since the NIS does not have investigative authority, Hong would not have been asked for location tracing, thus his claims do not make sense. As for the president, he sat through most of the trial with his eyes closed. The court did not allow him to question witnesses himself, as he did in the previous hearing. But when given the chance to speak, Yoon showed cynicism over the questions, emphasizing that nothing had happened.
이번 그 사건을 보면은 실제 아무런 일도 일어나지 않았는데 뭐 지시를 했니, 지시를 받았니, 뭐 이런 얘기들이 마치 어떤 호수 위에 떠 있는 달 그림자 같은 거를 쫓아가는 그런 느낌을 좀 많이 받았고요.
He once again appeared to deny he'd ordered the physical removal of lawmakers from the National Assembly and the arrest of politicians. He argued he'd ordered troops to withdraw as the martial law had ended, quote, early, and given the disorderly state of the National Assembly, there was no way for him to issue such instructions. But he admitted he'd ordered troops to go to the National Election Commission, once again suggesting suspicions of election fraud as a pretext for declaring martial law.
The president either didn't know the Election Commission is a constitutional institution that cannot be arbitrarily controlled even under martial law, or he knowingly ignored this fact. That alone is a constitutional violation.
The National Assembly side said while some testimonies do not add up, the ongoing investigations speak for themselves. The court has so far approved 15 witnesses, with 8 from Yoon's team and 7 from the National Assembly side. The rest of the 30-plus witnesses requested by Yoon were rejected on Tuesday.
증인 신청 일부 보류된 거에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하시나요? 추가로 하실 계획이?
We will conduct a thorough review, reapply for witness approvals if necessary, and explore other possible legal strategies.
There are 3 more hearings scheduled till next Thursday, but it's unclear at this point whether the justices will be able to wrap up the case by then or summon more witnesses for cross-checking and verification due to the conflicting narratives. The next hearing will be held on Thursday with 4 witnesses to testify. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And today, the National Assembly's Special Committee investigating the insurrection allegations against President Yoon will attempt to hold prison hearings. However, it seems that both the president and former defense minister are likely to skip these sessions. For more, we have our Kim Jung-sil on the line. Good morning, Jung-sil. Fill us in here.
Tommy, the special committee composed of lawmakers from both the ruling and opposition parties is currently conducting a field investigation at the Seoul Dongbu Detention Center to question former Minister Kim Yong-hyun. We're receiving live footage, and it appears the ruling party seats are empty, as they had indicated a likely boycott over the selection of President Yoon as a witness today. As a result, the field investigation is proceeding currently with only opposition lawmakers. Later today, at 2 p.m., the committee is scheduled to move to Seoul Detention Center to question President Yoon. However, with both Yoon and Kim having already expressed their intention to skip the questioning, it remains uncertain whether any substantial testimonies can be gathered today.
Right. Now, after that, what about Yoon's recent request to cancel his detention? I mean, what are his reasonings behind this move, and what's expected next?
That's correct, Tommy. President Yoon's legal team has filed a request with the court for the cancellation of his detention, arguing that the legal grounds for his arrest have either expired or no longer apply. They're claiming that the detention period based on the arrest warrant expired on January 25th at midnight, and therefore detention on January 26th was unlawful. The court is expected to decide on the request by the end of this week, specifically by February 7th. President Yoon's defense team also contends that the charges, particularly regarding the declaration of martial law, should not be classified as insurrection. Under South Korean criminal procedure law, the court must cancel detention if the grounds for the arrest no longer exist or have expired. However, the prosecution is maintaining its stance that the detention period was correctly calculated. They think that it expires on January 27th. Critics, particularly from the opposition party, say the defense's actions seem to be yet another attempt to exploit legal loopholes. That's all from me this morning. Back to you, Tammy.
Alrighty, Jung-sil, thank you for the coverage. And now, as Washington moves forward with sweeping duties on Chinese imports, Beijing is responding with targeted measures of its own, though possible talks between the leaders of the two sides have not been completely ruled out. Our Moon Hae-ryun reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's in no rush to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping as tensions rise between the world's 2 largest economies. This comes as the U.S. imposed an additional 10% tariff on all Chinese imports starting Tuesday, prompting a measured response from Beijing in the form of tariffs on American goods, such as coal and liquefied natural gas, as well as possible sanctions on major U.S. companies. When asked about the tit-for-tat levies, Trump remained unfazed and reportedly said that's fine. A White House official said that no call between the two leaders has been scheduled as of Tuesday. Beijing's tariffs are due to take effect starting next week, leaving room for negotiations. However, Trump has hinted that even higher tariffs could be on the table unless China addresses the supply of chemicals used to make the powerful opioid fentanyl to countries including Mexico, which is then smuggled into the U.S. Trump also suggested that the European Union could be next, prompting Brussels to keep a close watch on this latest round of trade measures. The head of the EU's Executive European Commission spoke out and said it is prepared to protect its own interest if the US shifts its attention to the EU.
We will be ready for tough negotiations where needed and to find solutions where possible. To work out any grievances and to set the foundations for a stronger partnership. We will be open and pragmatic in how to achieve that. But we will make it equally clear that we will always protect our own interests, however and whenever that is needed.
She said it is simply smart business for the US and the EU to strike the right balance between safeguarding security and working on where their mutual interests converge in trade and investment. Mexico was also part of Trump's lineup for state tariffs, but a deal to send 10,000 members of the country's National Guard to curb fentanyl trafficking at the border pushed back the levies for a month. On Tuesday, it was reported that Mexico began moving its troops to its northern border as part of its deal, with photos and videos circulating on social media showing reinforcements arriving in regions where some cities are frequently affected by drug cartel violence. The Mexican president said that the troops would also assist in maintaining overall security at the border. 문혜련, Arirang News.
And this tit-for-tat tariff cycle between the U.S. and China feels like deja vu, considering what we witnessed 6-7 years ago. Is there any room for negotiation so that the trade war doesn't become a repeat of the past? For more, we turn to Professor Yang Idong this morning. Welcome back, Professor Yang.
Hello, good morning.
So, agricultural machinery, pickup trucks, and also some large cars. Why is China targeting and hitting back with these select items?
Well, if we consider the total amount of export from the United States to China, that amounts to over $340 billion. I mean, this tit-for-tat tariff, the threat against the United States is just confined to about $13.9 billion. That takes about only less than 5% of the overall export from the United States to China. But very interesting here is those earnings are confined to two major items. The first one is agricultural pickup trucks, and also the functional vehicles. And another one is coals and LNG. But the phenomenon here is the agricultural pickup trucks are will make magnificent impacts on the agriculture area that who are very strong supporters for Donald Trump. And the functional equipment includes Tesla, of Elon Musk, who is working for a very critical role for the Donald Trump. And another, the target items, coals and LNG, the oil refining the companies are also very strong supporters for Donald Trump. So I can say that this tit-for-tat, warning against the United States is still very confined to the warning level, because it takes up only less than 5% of our export from the United States to China. So it gives some, the consideration time gap to the Trump government to reconsider about their decision to charge heavy tariffs on Chinese imports.
Well, Professor Yang, but the thing is, China's tariffs on the U.S. are due to begin next Monday. Why wait until the 10th? I mean, is this some sort of a strategic move?
Well, I can tell at the moment because the Chinese government is also concerned about signing two major companies, PVH and Illumina, as one of the two major untrustworthy companies list. If those two companies, the PVH is a fashion company including Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and Illumina is one of very promising biotech companies. If Chinese government appoint those two companies as untrustworthy companies, they can export to China. So that means Chinese government may need to have some more time to, make a final decision about that plan. And besides, they want to negotiate with the American government, because immediately after the Donald Trump's government decision to charge a large, tariff on Chinese import, the Chinese government also declared that they want to recover their trade agreement with the Trump, the first government. So they, if you take a look at about that old agreement between the Trump government and China, the Chinese government declared to import more than $20 billion of the American items, etc. So Chinese government wants to recover that item. So Chinese government is taking both a very aggressive and also very collaborative, the strategic options. So they need to have some more times to, calculate the trade-off, the balance between the aggressive threats and also very cooperative plans.
Well, we are waiting for a phone call between Trump and Xi to happen. Now, if they do, talk on the phone, what kind of deals do you think Trump and Xi will try to make, and what kind of deals will actually satisfy both of them?
Well, I do believe that they recover their phone calls because after, the Donald Trump's re-election, they already had phone conversations on January 17th. And also, Trump invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration ceremony, even though Xi dispatched his diplomatic, the envoy. So I do believe that they have very close personal relationship with each other. Well, if they recover their phone calls, even though Donald Trump declined that he will recover the phone calls with Xi Jinping even yesterday, but if they recover their phone calls, I do believe that they first we talk about how they can renegotiate about this the tariff issue. Well, there are the tariff exceptional articles in the world of trade. In other words, if the American government judges that those import items are very critical for their core competencies, and if there are no alternative items to help their manufacturing companies, it can give exceptions on the tax rate, tariff rate. So first of all, they will talk about whether the Chinese government can benefit from this tariff exceptional article. And secondly, they need to talk more about the Panama Canal. Panama Canal contains a lot of very complicated international political issues. So those are two major agendas they need to negotiate. I do believe that they will come up with a very, very solid agreement because there's a rumor that Xi Jinping is also intimidated by the very aggressive the political, the opponents. So for this, and there are many economic and political reasons. I do believe that those two, literally come up with some very, very solid agreement in the very near future.
Well, Professor Yang, before I let you go, it'll be inevitable for South Korea to see the harm once the tariffs do come into effect fully. What is there for us to do? I mean, is this where a large conglomerate step in and make deals with the U.S.?
Well, many people have a very serious concerns about the Donald Trump's government decision for the increase the tariff. Well, when it comes to our export, there is some professional report that our export really declined over $13 billion, particularly on the automobiles and the semiconductors. And the most serious concern is on the I think automobiles and home electronics. For example, the Hyundai Motors and Kia, both companies will suffer about more than $2 billion of the profit loss, respectively. And LG Electronics, they depend on United States market for the 25% of their overall export. So what are their countermeasures? First of all, they may have to reduce the export from their Mexican factories. Instead, they need to increase their manufacturing facilities in the United States. And when it comes to the memory semiconductors, our Korean companies have prepared well this issue since the first, the Donald Trump government. So, the Korean semiconductors, they have reduced their manufacturing in Chinese factories. Instead, they increase their manufacturing, lines in the Korean de facto lines. So I do believe the Korean companies will get adapted very effective and very fast to this very, very concerning issues from the Trump government.
Right, maybe the survival of the fittest. Professor Yang, thank you so much for your insight and your time this morning. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
And the price of gold reached a new all-time high on Tuesday as a demand for safe assets surged after the Trump administration imposed an additional 10% tariff on China. The spot gold price rose as high as $2,845.14 per ounce during Tuesday's intraday trading, hitting an all-time high. Now, the closing price of gold futures for April on the New York Mercantile Exchange stood at $2,875.80 per ounce, up 0.7% from the previous day. The continued increase in the price of gold comes amid growing concerns of an escalation in the trade war between the U.S. and China. Inflation in South Korea rose back into the 2% range for the first time in 5 months, spurred by rising oil prices. Now, data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday showed that the country's consumer price index rose 2.2% in January compared to the same month the year before. January marks the third month in which consumer prices have seen a year-on-year rise after inflation dropped to 1.3% last October. Notably, prices of petroleum products jumped by more than 7%. That's marking the highest rise since July last year. Thousands of people are fleeing the Greek island of Santorini, a famous tourist destination, as a result of an unprecedented series of earthquakes. The mass exodus has left the island nearly empty. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The picturesque Greek island of Santorini is a world-famous tourist destination. It also has some 20,000 residents. Now thousands are fleeing the island as it has experienced hundreds of earthquakes in just a few days. Around 550 earthquakes of magnitude 3 or above have been recorded since Sunday, with experts saying the tremors could continue for weeks. As February is the off-peak season for tourists on the Greek island, most of the people evacuating Santorini are residents.
Our Santorini is shaking every 10 minutes on average. A lot of earthquakes. There is concern.
Authorities have closed schools until Friday and have also warned against any large indoor gatherings on the island. Some have opted to sleep inside their cars over fears that a bigger earthquake would destroy their homes. Local residents say all shops have been closed and the island is virtually empty, leaving them with no choice but to leave the island. On Sunday, magnitude 4.8 earthquake struck 18 kilometers southwest of Amargos Island. Less than an hour later, a magnitude 4.7 earthquake shook Amargos and nearby islands, including Santorini. In 1956, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck near Santorini, killing 53 people and injuring more than 100. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now we take a look at the stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Dami.
So why don't we start in Sweden, where the country saw the worst mass shooting in its history. What happened?
Yes, Dami, a mass shooting at an adult education center in central Sweden has reportedly left 10 people dead, including the suspected gunman. The shooting occurred around 12:30 p.m. Tuesday local time at Campus Risbergska on the outskirts of Örebro city, 200 kilometers west of Stockholm. The suspected shooter is a 35-year-old male not previously known to police, and the motive behind the crime remains unclear as of now. At least 5 other people have been injured, and police have warned that the number of casualties may rise. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson addressed the nation, calling it the worst mass shooting in Swedish history and expressing deep sorrow for the victims and their families. Moving over to the Middle East, a shooting at an Israeli checkpoint in the northern West Bank killed 2 Israeli soldiers and left 8 wounded. The gunman was killed on site. The incident took place at around 6 a.m. Tuesday local time when a suspected Palestinian militant armed with an M16 automatic rifle charged an Israeli guard post. No further details on the gunman's identity have been released, but reports indicate he approached the checkpoint on foot overnight without being detected, delaying the soldiers' immediate response. The attack follows Israeli military operations in the West Bank 2 days after Israel agreed to a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza. Now to Ukraine, where a Russian missile strike in the city center of Izium, northeastern Kharkiv region on Tuesday killed 5 civilians and injured at least 55 people. The attack also destroyed a part of the city council building, which had been recently renovated. Among the dead was a pregnant teenager, while 3 children were injured in the attack. Ukrainian officials condemned the attack, labeling it a deliberate assault on civilian areas. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said it is impossible to reconcile with the cruelty and called on allies to pressure Russia to end the invasion that began nearly 3 years ago. Finally, to Japan, where the country's northern island of Hokkaido saw record-breaking snowfall on Tuesday. The city of Obihiro recorded some 120 centimeters of snow within a 12-hour period, setting a new national record for the most snowfall in that time. The Japan Meteorological Agency attributed the extreme weather to 2 powerful low-pressure systems, channeling cold air into the region. Numerous flights have been canceled, while roads, train services, and 370 schools have been closed as a result. Residents and visitors have been advised to practice caution and carry shovels and warm clothing in their vehicles.
After the long Seollal holiday last week, Korea is in the grip of a deep freeze, making a rougher week for many of us in Korea. Dangerously cold temperatures continue nationwide today, and factor in the wind, it feels even colder. Strong winds and heavy snowfall are also making for hazardous travel conditions, especially along the west coast and Jeju Island. Some areas are getting a significant amount of snowfall. Jeolla-do provinces and surrounding regions could see up to 15 centimeters of snowfall through tomorrow morning. Heavy snow alerts remain in place for those areas in Jeju. So if you're traveling to these areas, be prepared for delays. Seoul stays under sunny skies with a high of -5 degrees, Busan at 3. But the East Coast is under a strong and dry weather advisory. Fire precaution is a must. This cold snap is not going anywhere. The big freeze will stick around through the weekend. Until then, bundle up, limit time outdoors, and stay warm and safe.
And that wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.